If you follow the theories and concepts so far in this class, you will see that individuals are embedded in social systems. To understand veterans, you need to know the social systems that surround them, like anyone else. These systems include the larger society, organizations designed to help veterans transition to civilian life, and veteran families. If you recall my review of life course sociology, people are impacted by events in part by the context in which those events happen. Social contexts include cultural and historical. The text does a good job reviewing veterans from different American eras, ranging from World War II to present. Let's look at some classic ways that we categorize the ways that American soldiers have fought over the last century and how they were treated when they came home. World War II occurred roughly between 1941 and 1945. Over 16 million soldiers served in the Second World War. Some common injuries include cold injuries like frostbite and chemical exposure. We have images of soldiers serving in Europe and Asia for years on end under very difficult environmental conditions. The U.S. society generally treated U.S. veterans with respect because of the work during that war. The Korean War was roughly 1950 to 1953. While most wars had POWs, prisoners of war, it is especially associated with the Korean War because of the particularly brutal conditions and the concept of brainwashing. You may recall that this war was associated with the desire to limit the expansion of communism in the region, and communists had a desire to convince the West that they should change their ways, and they used POWs to help do this. POWs served an average of 2 years in these conditions, which is amazing to consider. Common injuries in Korea also included cold injuries and exposure to chemical agents, especially the one that we know as Agent Orange. Korean veterans are sometimes not as recognized as their World War II peers. Some people say it's because people wanted to forget about war in general, especially after World War II. And also people didn't understand the war in Korea as well as they did World War II, the purpose of the war, and why we were fighting in the first place. The Vietnam War happened in the 1960s and early 1970s. This war also saw issues with POWs, but this time they had longer stays, as many as 5 years under very similar, very bad conditions. Vietnam vets are also famous for their exposure to Agent Orange and other chemicals. About 2.7 million soldiers served in Vietnam. The Vietnam War is typically associated with great dissent among Americans for war and the Vietnam War in particular. Research is mixed about how the general public truly did treat soldiers, but it's generally thought that they were not well received when they returned. I'm going to combine the Gulf Wars into one big group. And if that's the case, the first Gulf War started in 1990, and the last one in Afghanistan ended in 2021. These engagements are important for several reasons. One, it was the first large-scale use of the all-volunteer force, and also the total force policy. These wars included significant involvement with modern media and the internet. And finally, these cohorts are known for the incidence of TBI and PTSD. About a third of veterans claim some disability based on their services. Veterans of the Gulf Wars are generally thought to be more respected and appreciated than their Vietnam and Korean War counterparts. There are dozens of organizations, maybe hundreds, that are designed to support soldiers, veterans, and their families. We will only look at a few of them here. We already discussed the development of the Veterans Administration in 1930. It was actually a culmination of several agencies that existed prior to 1930 in the U.S. Eligibility for VA benefits requires that a service member has received an other than dishonorable discharge from the armed services. This includes National Guard and reservists who are activated for full-time service. They cannot receive benefits if they left the service with a dishonorable discharge, but they don't have to have an honorable discharge either. The Veterans Health Administration, or VHA, provides health services to veterans. They also run hospitals and clinics, as well as nursing homes for veterans and care for disabled veterans. Veterans treatment courts are designed to provide alternative processing of veterans who have committed crimes. They are modeled after drug treatment courts, which emphasize therapy over punishment. I have a whole interview with Judge George McCarthy about treatment courts, so I won't review them here. Finally, I want you to know about other organizations that are considered nonprofits. Some do treatment, but many of them are simply support agencies. The most well known include the American Legion and the Veterans of Foreign Wars. In summary, this chapter reviews the culture associated with the different cohorts of veterans. I hope that you see that the way that we treat veterans has changed over the years. At times, the American people are supportive, other times less so. Many organizations have been created to help make the military to civilian transition easier, regardless of the culture they are returning to. All of these factors ultimately impact how veterans are able to make a transition back to civilian life.